Me by Schroeder. Episode 2. My Ancestors, Mother's Side. My grandmother's family name was Kraus, and they came from Bavaria, Germany, town of Oberalterheim near Würzburg. I have family tree history back to about 1800. Grandma came from a family of 7 children, and they emigrated in September 1884 from Bavaria by the ocean liner Eider from Bremen to New York, and then by immigrant railroad across to Portland. The Transcontinental Railroad had just been completed a few years earlier and made the trip a lot better than it had been by wagon. New York to Portland train fare was $65 for adults. The boat trip across the Atlantic took 9 days, and apparently they rode steerage. The train across the country took about 10 days. They slept on their seats with bedding they brought with them and ate food they brought along or what they could buy at the stops. Trains did not travel at night then. Grandma Witchy, maiden name Kraus, was the only grandparent I ever knew. She told me when they settled in Portland, the family had more daughters than they needed to do the work, and so, at age 13, as was the custom, she went to live with another wealthier family as a housekeeper/cook. She learned her trade well, as I remember her as one of the best cooks I have known. The family homesteaded in what is now northeast Portland, near 47th and Halsey. When I was growing up, 2 of Grandma's siblings were still living on the property and growing berries and stuff. In contrast, Mrs. Apperson, one of Grandma's good friends who emigrated at the same time, homesteaded in what is now downtown Portland, and she and her offspring became very wealthy. Such is life. Kate, one of Grandma's sisters, apparently married very well, as I remember her living in a very large house at the end of the block where my grandparents lived. Mother told me my grandparents were married in Kate's house, and she gave them the building lot on the block they owned to build their house on. This was the house on Vancouver Avenue, close to Page Street, where Grandma spent almost her entire life. And last time I drove by, it was the only house on the block still standing. Mother said it was built in 1901, but I thought Grandma said it was built a few years earlier. I remember doing some porch work for Grandma and discovering that the house was built with square nails. Grandmother, Dorothy Kraus, married Frederick Witchy in 1895. Grandfather, Frederick Witchy, was born in Sweden in 1865, but the next year the family immigrated to America. His father was Swedish, but apparently his mother was from Germany. They lived in the Midwest for a few years and then came to Oregon in 1882, homesteading in Silver Lake, Oregon. I spent 2 summers during high school years in Silver Lake fighting forest fires and never realized that I had roots there. I have family tree records of the Witchy family in Sweden dating back to about 1700. Ironically, great-grandfather Witchy's siblings who stayed in Sweden became very wealthy, and my brother visited them once in their castle on their estate near Malmo. Such is life. Somehow, my grandfather ended up in Portland and spent his working career as a freight foreman for Southern Pacific Railroad. He died in 1929, I think of injuries he received being hit by a car. Mother, Louise, was an only child, born in 1896. It sounds like they traveled around the country a lot when she was young, as Grandpa had a free rail pass. She attended Elliott Public Grade School and graduated from Jefferson High School. At some point, she also attended the school at Trinity Lutheran Church, I think maybe 8th grade. She then went to a business school and went to work as a secretary for the Forest Service. Grandma Witchy said she was a very good student and very good at math, which Mother said was not true. I think she was quite shy and modest, and I don't know how she met Leonard, but she did, and they married in 1922. Editor's note, in reference to how Louise and Leonard met. According to the 1910 census, Leonard lived with his family at 514 Flint Street and worked right around the corner at the Henry C. Schroeder's Furnishers store at 244 Russell Street from the time he was in the 8th grade, around 1903. On the next page of the 1910 census, we find Louise living with her parents at 479 Vancouver Avenue in a house that her parents built somewhere around 1900. The house was less than 500 feet from Leonard's house. Even though there was almost an 8-year age gap, at a time before most people had cars, it doesn't seem possible that they didn't know each other growing up. At the very least, their parents knew each other. And since Leonard was in his 30s and Louise was in her mid-20s and both still living with their parents, it's also possible that their parents helped move things along.